When God takes someone out of your life, especially a man you truly believed was meant for you, the first emotion that hits is often rejection. And rejection hurts. It wounds your pride, it shakes your expectations. It disturbs the image you had carefully built of what your future was supposed to be. But here's something many forget in that moment of pain. Rejection is not the end of your story. More often than not, rejection is actually God's redirection. It's divine protection disguised in a painful moment. Think about it for a second. When someone you deeply cared for suddenly leaves, or when a connection you thought would grow into something lasting slowly fades away, it feels like losing something valuable. You may even start questioning yourself, wondering, was I not enough? But maybe the real question isn't, why wasn't I enough? But what was I being protected from? Because sometimes the person you thought was right for you was actually standing in the way of your peace, your purpose, or your growth. Someone whose presence might have held you back, drained your heart, or even ruined your future. Psychologists talk about the power of cognitive reframing, the ability to look at the same event from a different angle and completely change its meaning. What if instead of seeing the loss of that man as abandonment, you saw it as protection? What if his absence wasn't a sign that you were unworthy, but a sign that your destiny was too sacred to be tied to someone who couldn't handle it? That change in perspective can transform your entire life. The philosopher Kierkegaard once said that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. When your heart is breaking, it's almost impossible to see why things are falling apart. But later, when you look back, you realize that what once felt like destruction was actually divine preservation. The door that slammed in your face wasn't punishment, it was mercy. The prayer that went unanswered wasn't neglect, it was strategy. The rejection you felt wasn't God abandoning you. It was Him saying, no, not this one. You deserve more than this. And yet, when you're standing in the middle of heartbreak, it can feel cruel. That's the mystery of divine protection. It rarely feels like protection while it's happening. It feels like betrayal, like isolation, like God has forgotten you. But imagine this, if you were walking straight toward a fire, unaware that it would burn you, and someone pulled you back suddenly, you might be upset at the force of their pull. But wouldn't you be thankful once you saw what you had been saved from? That's exactly what God does when He removes the wrong man from your life. He pulls you back, sometimes harshly, sometimes suddenly, but always out of love. The wrong man can appear in many forms. He can look perfect on the surface, speak sweet words, make promises that feel irresistible, and still not be who he seems. Beneath the charm, there can be selfishness, instability, or deceit. And if he stays too long, his influence begins to seep into your spirit like poison. Slowly, you start to change yourself to keep his attention. You silence your intuition to avoid conflict. You compromise your values to keep the relationship alive. And bit by bit, you drift away from who you were meant to be. That's why God steps in. He doesn't remove people from your life to punish you. He removes them to protect your purpose and preserve your peace. In psychology, we often discuss attachment, the way our brains get wired to crave the very person who hurts us. It's like being addicted to what's destroying you. That's why letting go feels unbearable at first. But God, in His wisdom, sees what you can't. He knows that staying attached to the wrong man will cost you far more in the end. So He severs the bond not to hurt you, but to set you free. The real test is whether you can trust Him in that in-between place. The space between heartbreak and healing, between rejection and revelation. That space is where faith is stretched and strengthened. It's easy to say, God is good, when everything is going right. But can you still say it when a door slams shut? That's where real faith is born. when you realize that God's no is spoken with the same love as his yes. Think about it. Some of your greatest blessings came not from what you gained, but from what you avoided. The job that didn't work out saved you from burnout. The friendship that ended taught you boundaries. The relationship that failed freed you from years of unhappiness. Every closed door was actually a form of protection in disguise. So when God keeps the wrong man away from you, don't focus on what you think you lost. Focus on what you were saved from. Because what looks like emptiness today is actually making room for something far greater tomorrow. Protection doesn't always come with clarity. Sometimes it shows up disguised as loss, as silence, or as rejection. But in time, you'll look back and realize that what God took away was never meant to define you. It was meant to save you. Maybe that's the message you need right now. Rejection is not abandonment, it's alignment. God isn't taking something from you. He's making space for something better. He isn't punishing you. He's preparing you. And the sooner you embrace that truth, the sooner you'll understand that every no from heaven is just another way of God saying, I love you too much to let you settle. So remember this. When God removes the wrong man from your life, it's never rejection. It's always protection. When God takes away someone who wasn't meant to stay, he doesn't just leave an empty place. He creates a sacred one. And what you do with that sacred space is important. Many people rush to fill it. To replace one person with another, to avoid the silence, to escape the loneliness. But what if that very silence is the place where God wants to heal you? What if that emptiness is the soil where your true self can finally grow? The wrong man doesn't just take up space beside you. He occupies your mind, your emotions, your spirit. His influence echoes in your thoughts, shaping how you see yourself, how you measure your worth. Sometimes his voice becomes louder than your own, even louder than God's whisper. That's why when God removes him, as painful as it feels, it's an invitation to rediscover who you are without the distortion of someone else's opinion. In psychology, there's a concept called identity foreclosure. When someone adopts another person's view of who they are before truly discovering themselves, it happens often in relationships. You start building your choices, habits, even dreams around that man. You hide parts of yourself to make the relationship work and exaggerate others to keep his attention. Slowly, you lose sight of where he ends and where you begin. When God takes that man away, what feels like heartbreak is really the restoration of your own identity. But here's where many go wrong. They confuse being alone with being unworthy. They believe that without a man, they're incomplete. That's not only false, it's dangerous. Loneliness is not a judgment of your value. It's a sign that your heart is longing for alignment, not just attachment. And this is where God does his best work, in the quiet. He gives you the space to hear yourself again, to hear him again. When the noise of a toxic relationship fades, you begin to notice the voice of your soul once more. Philosophers have long said that solitude isn't emptiness, it's presence. The presence of truth, clarity, and divine peace. When you sit in that sacred stillness long enough, you begin to see that what you thought was loss was actually liberation. God didn't reject you. He rescued you. He didn't take love away from you. He cleared the way for real love to find you. A love that won't ask you to shrink, to hide, or to beg to be seen. So if you are in that season right now, that etching in between where you miss what you had, but don't yet see what's coming, hold on. Because one day soon, you'll thank God not just for the doors he opened, but for the ones he firmly closed. The presence of your truest self in its purest form is something most people don't find until they are left alone with themselves. Kierkegaard once said that the most painful kind of loneliness is not being alone, but being in a relationship where you still feel alone. That truth cuts deep when you really think about it. How many times have you sat beside someone who claimed to love you, yet you felt unseen, unheard, or unappreciated? How often have you tried to explain your heart to a man who never truly listened or cared to understand who you are? When God removes that man from your life, He is not trying to make you suffer through loneliness. He is saving you from a much deeper and more painful loneliness. The one where you become invisible in your own story. The quiet that follows His absence becomes like a mirror. You begin to see what you once ignored. You notice your old wounds, the parts of you that accepted less than you deserved, the insecurities that tolerated disrespect, and the fears that clung to something unhealthy just because it felt familiar. Looking into that reflection hurts, but it's necessary. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. You cannot grow if you keep numbing your pain with distractions that only give you momentary relief. When the wrong man is gone, God leads you into a season where avoidance is no longer possible. Healing becomes the only road left. And healing is not about pretending the past never happened. It's about changing the story you tell yourself about it. Instead of saying, "I was abandoned," you begin to say, "I was protected." Instead of, "I wasted years," you tell yourself, "I learned valuable lessons." Instead of, "I was not worthy of love," you say, "Now I know what real love is not." That shift is not denial, it's transformation. It turns your wounds from marks that define you into lessons that refine you. As you heal, something powerful happens. You start to reclaim your boundaries. You realize what behavior you can no longer accept, what energy you can't let near you, and what values you refuse to trade away for the sake of love. The wrong man blurred those lines. He made you doubt your instincts and question your worth. But as you heal, clarity returns. You start to trust that quiet voice within that says, "This isn't right for me," or "This is the direction I should take." Most importantly, you discover that you are whole all by yourself. That doesn't mean you're meant to be alone forever. It means that your joy and your peace are not dependent on another person. That realization is true freedom. Because when you stop searching for a man to complete you, you open yourself to find one who can truly complement you. There's a huge difference between those two. Completion comes from emptiness, but complementing comes from fullness. It's the same truth spiritual teachers have always spoken to. You cannot give real love until you first allow yourself to be filled with love. And God, in His wisdom, fills that empty space first with His presence and then with a renewed sense of your worth. The season of healing is a reminder that love isn't something you chase. It's something you already carry within you. And when the time is right, that love overflows naturally into a relationship that mirrors your wholeness, not your wounds. So if you're in that season right now, if the wrong man has been taken away and all you feel is emptiness, understand this. That emptiness isn't a void, it's a vessel. It's sacred space being prepared for you to be restored, rebuilt, and renewed. God hasn't abandoned you in the silence. He's working in it. The pain you feel isn't punishment, it's preparation. And the question you must ask yourself is this: will I fill this space with distractions, or will I let it become the ground where I truly heal? That choice will decide whether you repeat old patterns or walk into new beginnings. Let this truth settle in your heart. When God removes the wrong man, He isn't leaving you empty. He's giving you the space to rediscover yourself, to heal, to remember who you are. And when you come out of that season, you'll see something powerful. What you thought was loss was actually liberation. One of the most overlooked blessings that come when God keeps the wrong man away from you is the sharpening of your discernment. Many people think discernment is some mysterious spiritual ability, but in truth, it's very practical. Discernment is the ability to see clearly, to separate what looks good from what is truly good, to tell the difference between charm and character, desire and destiny. And strangely enough, you often only gain that clarity after facing what was false. When the wrong man walks into your life, he often comes speaking the language of promise. He knows the right words, how to act, and how to make you feel seen. He knows how to touch the parts of your heart that long for attention. But over time, the illusion begins to fade. His words stop matching his actions. His promises lose meaning. His presence begins to drain you instead of feeding you. That painful contrast, the distance between who you thought he was and who he truly is, becomes your lesson in discernment. You start to listen differently. You stop being fooled by surface charm. You begin to notice patterns, not just moments. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy, persistence for devotion, or flattery for love. Psychologists call this pattern recognition. The human brain learns not just from single moments, but through repetition. The more you experience what doesn't work, the faster you recognize it next time. What used to take you years to realize, you now see in days. What once kept you stuck, you now walk away from with peace. That's not just maturity, it's wisdom in action. God, in His wisdom, sometimes lets you meet the wrong people so you can develop the ability to recognize the right ones. Philosophers have always connected discernment with wisdom. Aristotle spoke about practical wisdom, the kind that not only fills the mind but shapes the way you live. You can read about love, take advice from friends, and listen to sermons, but there's a kind of wisdom that can only come through experience. The wrong man, as painful as he is, becomes a teacher, not because he spoke truth, but because his deception made you hungry for it. His instability made you crave peace. His selfishness made you value generosity. His failure to honor you made you finally realize how deeply you deserve to be honored. Discernment isn't about becoming bitter or closed off. It's not about distrusting every person who walks into your life. True discernment isn't suspicion. It's clarity. It's seeing things for what they are while keeping your heart open. It's learning to test what's real without poisoning your spirit with resentment. Many people mistake discernment for hardness, but real discernment doesn't make you cold. It sets you free. It lets you stay open without being naive. It gives you the strength to love wisely. This is where faith and psychology meet. In Scripture, discernment is described as the ability to test the spirits, to know what's from God and what's not. In psychology, it's the refining of your intuition, the quiet signals that tell you something isn't right. When God removes the wrong man, He's clearing away the noise so you can hear that inner voice again. The lies that once clouded your judgment start to fall away, and you begin to trust the still, small voice within that whispers, "This doesn't align with who I am," or "This is not where I should be." So once you've experienced that kind of clarity, you can never go back to blindness. You begin to see the little things others overlook. The way someone treats people when they have nothing to gain. The difference between their public image and their private behavior, the depth of their values versus the shine of their appearance. You start to see beyond surface attraction into deeper alignment. Does this person share my vision? Do they respect my boundaries? Do they bring peace or chaos into my life? These questions rise naturally, not because you're suspicious, but because you're finally awake. Once your eyes adjust to the light, darkness can no longer deceive you. That's exactly what happens when God removes the wrong man from your life. He takes away what kept you blind, He shows you what you couldn't see, and He leads you into a season where you can finally love from a place of peace instead of pain. What once felt like a loss becomes your freedom. What once broke you becomes the very thing that rebuilds you into someone wiser, stronger, and whole again. The removal itself is not only protection, it's calibration. It resets your ability to see truth clearly. And in a world overflowing with false images, illusions, and temporary pleasures, that ability is priceless. It doesn't mean you'll never be deceived again or that you'll never make mistakes in love. It means your margin for error becomes smaller. You recover faster. You recognize sooner. You recognize sooner. You waste less time on people who were never meant for you. And that, in itself, is a kind of redemption. It redeems not just your heart, but also your time, your energy, and your future. What makes discernment so powerful is that it doesn't stop at your relationships. It spills over into every part of your life. When you begin to see people more clearly, you also start to see opportunities more clearly. You begin to sense what aligns with your calling and what distracts you from it. Your na becomes stronger. Your yes becomes more intentional. And your path becomes less crowded with detours and disappointments. In that way, the removal of the wrong man is not just about love. It's about destiny. So maybe the next time you feel the sting of someone walking away, you can pause and ask yourself, what clarity is God giving me through this? What patterns am I learning to recognize? What part of my intuition is waking up? Because if you can find the gift of discernment hidden inside the pain of separation, you will carry that clarity with you long after the hurt fades. And that clarity will do something powerful. It will keep you from repeating cycles. It will stop you from falling for the same illusions again. It will keep you from mistaking attraction for alignment or passion for purpose. It will make you wiser, and wisdom is far more valuable than any fleeting comfort the wrong man could have offered. So let me leave you with this thought. When God keeps the wrong man away, He is not only protecting your heart, He is perfecting your vision. And once your eyes have been opened, you will never again settle for walking in the dark. When God removes the wrong man from your life, it's not just for protection. It's not only about giving you time to heal or sharpening your discernment. It's also about making space. Because the truth is, the right one cannot step into your life until the wrong one has been removed. Two things cannot fill the same space. Your heart cannot hold both compromise and promise at the same time. This is one of the hardest lessons to accept. Our instinct is to cling to what's familiar, even when it hurts us, because the unknown feels frightening. Letting go feels like falling into emptiness, while holding on, even to the wrong person, feels like safety. But here lies the paradox. Holding on to the wrong man is exactly what keeps you from the love and partnership you've been praying for. God knows this, and that's why He steps in. He removes what doesn't belong, not to punish you with loneliness, but to prepare you for alignment. From a philosophical view, this touches on the idea of potential. Aristotle once said that something cannot move into its full potential until what blocks that potential is taken away. A seed cannot grow into a tree if it's choked by weeds. In the same way, your future cannot fully bloom if your present is tangled up with someone who drains your light. The absence feels painful, but it's not destruction. It's preparation. It's God clearing out the weeds so the soil of your life can finally nurture what was always meant to grow. From a psychological view, there's something called displacement. The mind only has so much space to focus, to invest, to attach. When you are emotionally tied to the wrong man, he takes up that mental and emotional space. Your heart, your mind, and your energy become tied up in a story that has no real ending. That displacement keeps you unavailable, even if you tell yourself you're ready for love. You might say you're open to love, but as long as your mind keeps circling back to the wrong man, you're unavailable in the ways that matter most. God knows this, which is why He doesn't just invite you to let go. Sometimes He removes that person forcefully, because He knows that without that release, you cannot step into the fullness of the love He has planned for you. It's not only about timing, It's about alignment. The right man isn't just a good man. He's a man whose life, values, and vision align with yours in ways that strengthen your purpose instead of distracting from it. But alignment requires space. Think of a lock and a key. If the wrong key is jammed in the lock, the right key cannot turn it. That's how many people live. Frustrated that their life doesn't unlock. Not realizing the wrong person is stuck in the very place meant for the right one. God, in His mercy, removes that wrong key, often through a painful break, so that when the right one comes along, the fit is seamless. And here's where trust becomes essential. From your view, all you can see is what you've lost. All you feel is the ache of absence. But God sees farther down the road than you can. He sees the man who will not only love you but also respect you, honor you, and walk beside you with integrity. He sees the man whose presence won't shrink who you are but expand it. He knows that as long as your arms are full of what doesn't belong, you'll have no space to receive what does. That's why faith in God's timing is so important. The human impulse is to rush, to demand answers, to fill the waiting with anything that dulls the pain. But divine timing is never rushed and never late. It's always perfect. What feels like waiting is actually weaving. God is weaving your story with someone else's, aligning paths, building maturity, shaping character, and arranging circumstances so that when the right one comes, both of you are ready. But remember this, the arrival of the right man isn't just about romance. It's about destiny. The right person in your life does more than make you feel loved. They amplify your purpose. They challenge you to grow. They hold you accountable to your best self. They walk beside you in a way that makes the weight of life lighter and the joys of life deeper. That's why the wrong man has to be removed, because his presence would have weakened your purpose, while the right man's presence will magnify it. This is where your discernment, shaped in the last season, begins to bear fruit. Because when the right one appears, you'll recognize him, not by intensity, but by consistency. Not by promises, but by proof. Not by the chaos of butterflies, but by the peace of alignment. And you'll only be able to recognize that because you learn to see clearly when God first removed what was never meant for you. So the next time you feel abandoned by a door closing, remember this: no blessing can enter a space already filled with baggage. God removes to replace. He empties to fill. He closes one chapter to begin another. What seems like subtraction is actually preparation for multiplication. And maybe this is the deepest truth of all. The right man can only arrive when the wrong man is gone, because real love doesn't compete with counterfeit love. True love doesn't fight for scraps of attention. It meets you in wholeness. But wholeness needs room to exist. So if you're in that season right now, if you feel the ache of what's been taken away, let that ache remind you God isn't withholding from you. He's preparing you. He's making space in your life for a love that mirrors not just your desires, but your destiny. And when that moment finally comes, you'll look back and realize that every removal, every closed door was never rejection. It was choreography. It was divine alignment, the graceful unfolding of your life toward the one who was always meant to walk beside you. Here is the truth you can hold close. The wrong one must leave before the right one can arrive. And when God makes space, it's because He intends to fill it with something worthy of your waiting.